Okay, the Gemara asks why we have the mitzvah of sukkah. It's an interesting question because you can ask that about every mitzvah. But the Gemara seems to imply that even though mitzvahs einot tzrichos kavana, when you do a mitzvah, you don't have to know why you're doing it. The exception is sukkah. When you sit in a sukkah, you're supposed to know why you sit in the sukkah. You have to know why. So the Gemara has a machlokas. There's two opinions. The first opinion is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, you know what sukkah was? The clouds. Around the camp were clouds. I mentioned to you last year, why is sukkah 7 days? Because, Pesach, I understand 7 days. They left and they crossed the Yam Suf on day 7. Shavuot is 1 day. The Chuslar is 2 days because they got the Torah. Sukkot was for 40 years in the desert. Where'd you get 7 days? Yeah. So they answered that there are 7 clouds. It was on all 4 sides, top, bottom, and a cloud that led you. So there were 7 clouds. So we have Sukkah for 7 days, 7 clouds. One opinion says that Sukkah is in conjunction with Yetziat Mitzrayim. We left Mitzrayim. It took 7 days to get to the Yam Suf. Hoshana Rabbah was like the Kriyat Yam Suf. Judgment Day for the Egyptians, Judgment Day for the Jews. Okay. Rabbi Akiva says, no, they actually built sukkahs. Hashem built little huts. Everybody had a hut, a tent, that it wasn't just the Ananei HaKavod, it was actually little houses. And when there's a machloka between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, we always paskin like Rabbi Akiva, yet here's the exception. Here everybody seems to say, what was the sukkah? The clouds. It's interesting. Now, the Chidah, the Or HaChaim says, but many of them say, if you ever want to know what a word or something means, find out the first time it's mentioned in the Torah. That tells you what it is. When is the first time the word sukkah is mentioned in the Torah?
Sukkot.
No. It's in Sefer Bereshit. In the book of Bereshit, not about the Chagim. It says when Yaakov came to the city of Shechem, he built for himself a house, and for his cattle, for his cows and his sheep, he built a sukkah, like a barn. So the Or HaChaim says, like, whoa, you build a beautiful house and you call the city the barn. You built a beautiful house and you have a little barn, and you say, oh, this is the barn town. Doesn't make sense. It's barnyard. It's a little bit unusual. Must be that to build something for the cattle was very strange. It was the first time. And they bring down a lot about it. They talk about Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov and Esav fought over the world. Esav says, I get the world. You get Olam Haba, I get this world. So what did Yaakov do? Yaakov showed him this world is nothing. It's like a sukkah. It's temporary. It's for cattle. It's not for people. It's like this world means nothing. So that's very interesting. And Yaakov did something good for the cattle. He protected the sheep, the goats. Everybody says the cattle, who cares if it rains on them? If they die, they die. Yaakov made improvements. So it's fascinating that Yaakov did the things that he did to make the world a better place by protecting the cattle. And it's interesting that Yaakov sent a message to Esau, you want this world means nothing. That's why he called it sukkah, meaning temporary. Now, there were 3 gifts given to the Jewish people in the desert. The man, in whose chut was the man given? Moshe. There was water, the be'er, the well, Miriam. And the clouds was b'schut Aharon. Do we have a special yontiv in honor of the well? No. Do we have a special yontiv in honor of the man? No. Becomes the clouds, we have a special yontiv. Aaron's gift, we get a special yontiv 7 days because of the gift of Aaron. So the short answer might be that food and water is necessary. That's basic. You can't live without food and water. We didn't need the clouds that were air conditioned. We didn't maybe need that much. But the Vilna Gaon gives something different. The Vilna Gaon says that after the sin of the golden calf, the Chet Egel, the clouds disappeared. One of the consequences was that the clouds were gone. And then Moshe went up to daven for 40 days. They went up again 40 days. For 80 days, 2.5 months, 3 months, there were no clouds, no protection. They were out in the sun. And maybe that's when they had those real sukkahs that Rabbi Akiva was talking about. When did the clouds come back? After Yom Kippur, when Hashem forgave them. So the Vilna Gaon says that's why Sukkot is after Yom Kippur. Normally it should happen right around Pesach time. We should be eating the matzah in the sukkah, because that's when they got it. But he says, no, they got it, but it disappeared. It only came back after Yom Kippur. So then Sukkot is right after Yom Kippur. And he says something even more remarkable. Why do we have a Yom Tov for it? He says when they came back, the clouds, they came back not only the same like before, but better. He says when you do an Aveirah and then you do Teshuvah, you're stronger, you're better. He says Hashem sends better clouds, stronger clouds, nicer clouds. So therefore he says that Sukkah, Zman Simchas Leinu, we're so happy because the Sukkah represents Hashem's protection. Why do we have Hashem's protection? Because He forgave us. Why did He forgive us? He forgave us for the sin of the golden calf. So the Vilna Gaon connects everything. That's why Sukkah is in the fall. And that's why it's after Yom Kippur. And that's why we have a Yom Tov for it. And that's why it's a time of simcha, of joy, because of everything that happened, that we were able to get much greater enjoyment for it. He brings down, for example, the Chidah, that we say Kohelet on Sukkot, because of the fact that, it's so temporary, everything, that it just shows you how things are not permanent in this world. Now, I was speaking to one of my brother-in-laws, and we came across something very interesting. He told me that he grew up in the 1940s, late 1940s, 1950s. His father was a rabbi in Williamsburg. You have to understand the Jewish community. The Jewish community began on the Lower East Side, that's where Moshe Feinstein was, and Williamsburg. And eventually it spread to Borough Park and Flatbush. But it started in those two areas. So he says that in his father's shul in Williamsburg, and later he moved to Queens, the Sunnyside, he says there's only 4 people in the shul that had a lulav and an esrog. They had 2 for the shul, that people borrowed and put back. The rabbi had a lulav and an esrog, and the gabbai, or the president of the shul, had a lulav and esrog. That's it. Maybe 4 people. The shul had hundreds of people, 4 people had a lulav and esrog. Now I found this very unusual, because my father was a rabbi in Denver, and he used to sell lulavs and esrogs. I grew up, in the basement, we used to have lulav and esrogs. He probably sold 100, 200 lulav and esrogs, and Denver wasn't as big as New York. New York was 10 times bigger. We used to get the lulavs from Phoenix, Arizona, and the esrogs they got from Israel, or wherever. So I said to him, how could it be that in Williamsburg, in the shul in Williamsburg, only 4 people had it? So he said to me that he heard that many people had a lulav and an esrog in their houses, but they didn't bring it to shul because they were afraid to walk in the street with a lulav and an esrog. And they were embarrassed. They were embarrassed to walk in the street with a lulav and an esrog because everybody would stare at them. Now, you don't understand what was like America was like in the 1950s. I'll give you an example. There's a story of a bank officer, a guy who worked in a bank. And he became a chozer b'tshuva. So now that he was becoming more religious, he was afraid to wear his yarmulke in the bank. He didn't wear his yarmulke in the bank. Rav Moshe has questions like that. Women, could they wear a sheitel in the bank? Because in America, you didn't wear a hat. When you went into a library, you took your hat off, or they threw you out. He told me a story. He says that my brother-in-law says when he used to go to a baseball game, in the 60s, he went to a baseball game. So he wasn't going to wear a yarmulke. People didn't wear a yarmulke. He wore a cap like you're wearing. Now comes the national anthem. Today, what do you do when you hear the national anthem? You go on one knee, and you fight the president and all the chutzpah. In those days, if you were wearing a hat, what did you do when the national anthem came? You took off the hat. Because if you didn't take off the hat, you didn't live. You took off the hat. So all the Jews, religious Jews, they took off the hat. They weren't wearing a yarmulke. But they said, we're not walking, we're just standing, right? So we take off the hat, and that's when they put the hat back on. So he said he used to do that. He took off the hat. You know what happened? One time he went to a baseball game, and 3 rows in front of him were 3 nuns. And what do nuns wear? The habit, right? When they played the national anthem, did they take off the habit? No. And no one said anything. So he says, if the Catholic nun can wear her head covering, I can't wear a yarmulke? So some of them started to wear yarmulkes. That's when things began to change. You know, it's amazing. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They were embarrassed. So this bank officer said, I'm not going to wear a yarmulke in the bank. Okay. Sits down for lunch. He has a sandwich. So he wants to wash the tilat yadayim and make hamotzi. He's not wearing a yarmulke. Doesn't know what to do. All of a sudden, a very rich guy comes in with a bag full of money. Nickels, dimes, quarters, bills, $100 bills, $20 bills, and the bag breaks. And the money goes all over the floor. What happens? Everybody comes running. All the bank officers in their $500 suits, and they're all on their hands and knees, and they're all, So he says, imagine, for a $500 suit, they're crawling on the floor for a nickel and a dime. I shouldn't wear a yarmulke. So he put on his yarmulke. It's a true story. He put on his yarmulke. I'll give you an example. When I was in 8th grade, so I was 12 or 13. In Denver, growing up in Denver, we didn't have camp. Here you have summer camp, right? We didn't have summer camp. At least I didn't go to a summer camp. So my mother, who was very strict about education, even though she never went past 3rd grade, my mother never made it past 3rd grade, because the war broke out. The war broke out, and she was in China.
That's what she wanted you.
Right. So she sent me to summer school. What was the summer school class? It was typing. She felt it would be a good thing for me to learn how to type, using 10 fingers, and you learn how to type. She didn't know about computers yet, it wasn't computer time yet. But once you know how to type, she figured that would be a good thing to learn. Okay. So I go into class, 20 kids, 30 kids, it's summer school, and I'm wearing a cap, like you're wearing a cap. So the first thing the teacher says to me is,
Take off your cap.
Take off the cap. In public school, you don't wear a cap. Got it. I was prepared. Took off the cap, I was wearing a yarmulke. So she says, no, we don't wear big caps, and we don't wear small caps. Get rid of the cap. Right, get rid of it. I says, well, it's a religious thing, I can't get rid of it. She says, well, listen, got to make a choice. Either you get rid of it, you'll learn how to type, or you'll wear it and you're out. And I said, well, have a nice day. And to this day, if you ever come and watch me type a letter, how do I type? 2 fingers like this. I still type like this. I'm very fast. I'm probably as fast with my 2 fingers as people are with their 10 fingers. But I never learned how to type because I had to make a choice. And I didn't want to go anyway. But the truth is,
What did your mom say?
what did my mother say? Well, my mother understood. My mother understood that they made an issue of the yarmulke. She wasn't happy, but she wasn't going to, as we say, you can't fight City Hall. She wasn't happy. But that's what it was. You never wore a hat inside. You didn't wear it in the street. It was very unusual. So, he was saying to me that in those days they were very much afraid. Even today, how many of you walk the streets with your lulav and esrog? Do you think people see you? Do you think cars look at you? Do you think, you don't really care? I care. I see people stare at me. I'm walking to shul down Metropolitan Avenue. People stare at me. And what's better? Some people have these big, long these cases. Probably people think you're carrying a shotgun, I'm afraid to carry one of those things, I'll get the police will pull me over, they think you're carrying a shotgun. And today, it's not been a good day for America, the news has not been good today.
Yeah,
So,
I have a question. In the court, they still say take off the hat.
yes, but they'll let you wear a yarmulke.
But it's not hat like this?
No way. They take off the hat, no hat at all. They'll let you wear a yarmulke. They'll let someone who's Sikh to wear a turban, probably. We've come a long way. You talk about religious equality. You know, it's no longer like it was in the 60s with racial inequality. We've come a long way. But yet, you know, I gotta tell you, I'm not, you know, if I have to go to fly, I just don't whip out my tallis and tefillin in the airport. I try to go to a private area where people are not watching me, because everybody looks at you, you know, they think you're crazy.
Yeah, something is.
I did in Jordan.
What?
In Jordan. I put
Yeah,
it
so-
in the airport.
Yeah, but the Arabs, they put out a carpet and they bow down and nobody says boo,
Yeah.
you know?
Did in Ukraine in the airport.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Jews over there.
So you
Not
were
a lot,
lucky,
but a few.
but a few that weren't. When I was in Warsaw, they sent us to the chapel next to the big cross, and they said you can put on your religious items next to the cross. We said, no, thank you. You know, but it's not so simple, you know, because you feel the goyim look at you, and we're tzanua, we're a little bit modest. Not that we're embarrassed to be Jewish. We're not embarrassed. We're just you know, we don't do it publicly. You know, we do things a little bit different. You know, in that regard. Let's talk a little bit more. It says over here, just that we should understand a few things. In Parshas Zos HaBrocha. So everybody gets a bracha. One shaver doesn't get a bracha. Which shaver doesn't get a bracha? No, Levi gets. The Levi Omar to Mecha v'urecha lish chasidecha. Who doesn't get? Shimon. Shimon doesn't get. Now, there's a famous pirush over here. It says, Tumecha v'urecha. What's Tumecha v'urecha? What was that called, the Tumecha v'urecha?
What do you mean?
It was called the Urim v'tumim. So it reverses it. It doesn't call it Urecha v'tumecha, Urim v'tumim. It says Tumecha v'urecha. Why is it backwards? Do you understand the question? That means normally it's called the Urim v'tumim. And here it says, Ulalevi Omar, Tumecha, Tumim v'Urim. Did you notice that?
No.
Not yet. So Rashi asks that. Rashi says, Tumecha v'Urecha. Rashi says, Kalape Shechina hu medaber. He's talking about Hashem. So that answers it. So now the problem goes away.
How does that?
That's a very good question. I was hoping you would explain it to me. Okay, so let's go like this. Why was the Kohen Gadol's breastplate called the Urim v'Tumim? Why was it called Urim v'Tumim? Describe how it worked. You ask questions.
The letters sign.
Urim, they were lighted letters, and his job was to take the letters and make Tumim, words.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? For example, Eli HaKohen washes Chana davening quietly. So letters pop up. A shin, a chof, a reish, a hey. He reads it, shikoda. Shikoda means drunk. So he goes over and says to her, lady, you're drunk. Go home and sleep it off.
Don't play.
What are you doing here? But the letters really meant kishera. She's a good woman. Leave her alone. Or some people say it meant kisada. She's like Sarah crying for a baby. So he didn't read it right. That was a sign that he lost his right to be the Kohen Gadol. When you don't read it right, it was a special skula to be able to read things the right way.
It's no problem.
So now that he made a mistake when he read it, so when he got embarrassed, when she says, I'm not drunk, I'm just brokenhearted, so he gave her a bracha. You know, if I suspect you of something and I'm wrong, I'm supposed to give you a bracha, that your bracha should come true. But it was a sign that the kahuna was going to leave his family, which it did. After he died, it left his family, went to the family of Pinchas. It left his family. So that was called Urim v'Tumim, right? You have lights that you make into words. That's the receiver. For every receiver, there's a transmitter. Who has the transmitter? Hashem. What does Hashem have? He has the words that he breaks up into lights. So what would you call Hashem's transmitter? Tumim v'Urim. That's what Rashi says, Kalapi Shechina medaber. Tumecha v'Urecha. It's a very fascinating pshat.
And what's the parasha?
In V'zos HaBrocha. Tumecha v'Urecha. Rashi says it's talking about Hashem. Hashem has the words, he breaks it into lights. So the Kohen Gadol is wearing the Urim and Tumim. That's the receiver.
First light in the other world.
Right. But Hashem has the transmitter.
First words of.
Right. Then it talked about the Gemara has a whole machlokes. At the end of the Gemara has a whole machlokes. Who wrote the last 8 psukim of the Torah? It says in the last 8 psukim, Vayom Hashem Moshe, Moshe died. Who wrote those words that Moshe died and he was buried? So there's a debate. So what's the answer? It's a machlokas. One opinion is Yoshua ben Nun wrote it. The last 8 psukim of the Torah, Yehoshua wrote. Comes Rab Meir, and Rab Meir says, what? Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the Torah.
That's it.
The whole Torah. Not half the Torah, not 3/4 of the Torah. He wrote it all. There was no Yehoshua writing Torah. Moshe wrote the Torah. So Moshe wrote it, and he was crying when he wrote that he died and everything else.
Oh,
That's what Rab Meir says. The Vilna Gaon says it's a combination of both. Fascinating Vilna Gaon. He says Moshe wrote it with tears. He didn't use ink. So it was written, but it wasn't strong. It was weak. It was, it was like outlined.
Not clear.
And then Yoshua came with ink and he filled in the letters, which is what we do when we finish a Sefer Torah, right? The Sofer sometimes has the lines and we fill it in. So we finished the Torah the same way Yoshua finished the Torah. But who actually wrote it? Moshe. How did he write it? With his tears. Moshe says, the Gemara says, he wrote it with tears. And in those tears, eventually he filled it in, and that's how he got the Torah. Okay. Next. Let's go a little bit further. Lulav and esrogs, right? Right? So we have a lulav and an esrog, hadassim and arovos. Okay. Altogether, it's interesting. The lulav and esrog is 2. 3 hadassim and 2 arovos is 5. Makes a total of 7. So the lulav and esrog equals 7. Sukkot is 7 days. You know, the number 7 comes up a lot. We talked about 7 and 7 is 14. You multiply that by 7. It was the whole thing that we talked about 98 against the klolos that we mentioned before. Ashkenazim, some Ashkenazim, when they make the lulav and the esrog, they have a holder, right? You buy a holder which has 2 sides to it, and you put the hadassim here and the arovos here, and you tie it all together, and that's your lulav and esrog. Sephardim don't do a holder, right?
Yeah.
What do?
You just
tie it up with a
You
rope.
tie it. The problem with that is that you tie it just like that, and then you hold it, you could come to rip off the leaves. You know, you're holding the lulav and the esrog, and when you're holding the lulav, so a lot of the leaves of the hadassim or the arovos could fall off, especially as it begins to dry. The minute you hold it, it's got to fall off. You must have a whole bunch of leaves all over the place. What do? So, you know me, I'm the king of compromise. So I don't have the 2 holder. I have a single holder like this. So I put the hadassim and the arovos inside, and I hold the holder so it doesn't rip off the leaves. So I do it like the Sephardi way, but with an Ashkenazi flair, an Ashkenazi touch.
Is there a picture?
Someone asked me if I had a picture last night when I was doing it, and the answer was, sure. Let me see. Here. See if that, do you see how that is? It's a single holder, and you put it on the lulav, and then you put in the hadassim and arovos. You see that? Now, let me show you.
Experiment.
How to do it. I'll show you once, and then you'll do it after that without a problem.
Show it here too.
I should show it on there also. Do you see how it is in there? Does it look interesting to you? It has an interesting
I
idea.
see it first time actually.
First time you see it.
I mean the way you do. I mean I've seen.
Yodgir. Daha ne yapamadı işte.
Separate ones,
I
but you
know.
did it
I
like
used to know the.
Yeah, I used to know too.
in a professional way.
I'm serious. I did it last year. I just forget.
You forget from year to year.
Oh my God, you're getting old, bro. Come on, man.
You're having a senior moment?
Yeah, you get great hair, that's it.
You're gonna start looking like me now?
What's going on? Oy be.
Stop.
Samo piće video da.
Oh,
Where did I learn this? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Where did any person learn most of the things that I
yeshiva.
know?
Yeshiva.
You know, some
No.
learning yeshiva
experience.
from your friend.
Oh.
My father made lulav and esrogim. We didn't have, lulav and esrogs. So we have to.
They still sell this.
They don't sell it.
They make it.
You make it. Right?
Oh,
You see? You make it. It's a single one. Try to make it. Let's see if we can get this stuff.
Like a food
they.
I make it for
Yeah,
me,
see.
and I also make it for my kids. You know?
They can make it like you?
Can we request?
Can you request? So far, I haven't been successful making it here. I'm on the camera, you get nervous. Then you have to know how to do it, and there's a certain way that you have to keep it up. There we go. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we are successful.
Fruit basket they do.
Right. You know,
Fruit basket actually.
something like that. And then we'll see whether or not we're successful.
Dana acele mi oldu?
Too much work.
Too much
Too much
work.
work.
You gotta use your brain, that's it.
Get that one together.
Don't be lazy, that's right.
It's
When you're
not
lazy,
so much work, it just,
yes, you have to use your...
but it's not the ones that they have where you have the double. This is a single.
Single, yeah.
So you can put the hadassim and arovas directly against the lulav, so it doesn't have a chatzitza, even though this is not a chatzitza, but it gives you the ability then to hold. And for the kids, it's great because this is much smaller.
Can I have this after, Rabbi?
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't,
So you have to make a
by now you know with me,
form.
it's
Rabbi.
nothing really to do with money. My life doesn't surround money. It's never,
That's why I want to know. That
people
could
come
we
to me all the
request
time.
A few, I think.
okay?
For more people online.
Nice.
Okay, let's go one more. And we'll see how that goes. You just have to be careful. Sometimes it dries out. We'll do one more, maybe one more. Okay,
Maybe you go to YouTube to showing like that. Huh?
there we go. Then you have to
Isn't
do
it
the
too,
bottom.
This is
too narrow?
exclusive.
Well, it stretches eventually.
Wow.
And it's nice when you have, I have at home 2 or 3 lulavs like this that are puzzle. And what I do is I make it with a puzzle lulav,
Druk jeszcze.
because I
Oh,
buy
yeah, man. 2 o'clock.
for my family, for my children, for my grandchildren.
Robiłem.
Okay, there we
I
go.
don't know if they're my friends.
Się zapomniał.
Все, завтра сделаешь, знаешь. Запомнил ты? Очевидно. Надеюсь на тебя же?
So 4 with 2 each, so it's 8 ends, right?
Well, it's 4,
Double. 8.
right.
Nice.
Yad gir. Это бизнес. Можешь делать.
I'll start trimming it a little bit, otherwise I won't know where to stick the next ones in. I gotta finish it off here. Okay. Almost done. It takes just a few minutes to do.
If you know how to do it.
Значит, Ногу.
This?
Twist it.
Oh,
Twist.
like this? Or just like...
Twist it. You know how to do it?
I don't like
No, he's learning. He wants to learn how to do it.
Boring. You know everything. What is boring?
Well,
You know everything in your life.
that's correct.
You need everything for your life. Because you cannot say, oh, I don't need this, I don't need that. You need to know everything.
Okay,
Ja, dan maken we. Als je het maar kan.
not that
Het
complicated.
maar kan. Okay.
And, see, and then what happens is,
Wow.
you put it on the lulav, and you put in the hadassim and the aravos, and then you can take one of these and you just tie it around this way, and you tie the bottom, and this way, it
You
just
not
makes it,
move.
right, this way, you have something to hold. You hold the lulav and this together, and you accomplish everything. You have the hadassim and aravos against the lulav itself, like you do, right? And yet,
But
you
it
can play with
would
this.
save
you know.
many long time, right? No?
How much was that? What did you ask?
I mean,
Да, она как пружинка.
could you set for next year too?
It dries out, you know. I don't know. It depends how well you take care of your lulav and everything else.
Really some.
Very nice.
And the leaves not gonna fall down? The leaves.
No, you know, you stick it in, you know, and it's.
Завяжем.
It would be nice if you could make it a little bit longer, but you know, sometimes, you know, it all depends how long you have. You know, these are getting shorter and shorter over here. You know, you try to make it.
Would this be a kosher lulav?
This was not a kosher lulav. Whatever the reasons were, it was not a kosher lulav. You know, they're all about the same size. So it was not a kosher lulav. So sometimes I have at home lulavs that are much taller, so the leaves are a little bit longer. So it makes the holder a little bit longer as well.
So you're making for me now?
How are we doing time-wise? As long as I can get home tonight, this is a good thing. Okay? You know, it's interesting. They talk about the Beis Hamikdash was built in the portion of Binyamin, right? Well, the Binyamin Omar, Bank Seif of Shachin, that Hashem was going to live between his shoulders. Why was Binyamin, the Beis Hamikdash, built in Binyamin's portion?
Because he lost his mother. He's like Benoni.
Well, he lost his mother, which is interesting. Yosef also lost his mother at the same time. The Rachel was the mother to both. Now they say that Binyamin was the only one born in Eretz Yisrael of all the children. He was the only one who did not bow down to Esav. Okay? He was not there by Mechiras Yosef. He wasn't there when Yosef was sold.
Yeah.
You know? There's one period that says Binyamin was actually the first one to jump into the Yam Suf, Sheva Binyamin. They chickened out in the end, and Yehuda took over.
Nachshon.
But Nachshon ben Aminodo. But the reality is Binyamin had special, you know, special reasons why. Okay?
So where is the
So you're going to do this one for
where is
me?
the other brothers were born?
They were all born in Lavan's house.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Yaakov first left Lavan's house after Yosef was born. Now Rachel was expecting Binyamin, right? You see how it starts? It starts like a weave.
Да, как волосы, вот так, через один, как корзинка держи.
And then you just have to
Вот
weave
эту
it.
берешь, пока вот сюда тоже делаешь круг.
You start with underneath, and then you have to make sure as you do it, because sometimes it separates on top. You have to squeeze it to.
So one you take from here, one from there, one from right, one from left.
Well, you have to know what you're doing. It's a weaving process. You see, but then as you weave it, you have to tighten it a little bit. You know, you have to pull different ones. You know, like this one over here. Then you squeeze it to stretch it out. Sometimes you can make it very tight, because when it dries out, it will separate a little bit.
Можно, говорит, чуть-чуть подрезать, если рова это, конечки надо подрезгивать, чтобы жил лайф лифт,
Right.
долго живет. Не это, вот это то. Это арава и хадасим, говорит, поезд чуть-чуть. Я вам будет это...
I'm not here to change your minhag. Your minhag is to put it together on the lulav, that's fine. I told you in a strange way, it was my minhag also.
Yeah, but it's a good idea.
But it is a good idea.
Does anybody else know about this?
Does anybody else, I've never seen it anywhere. The only ones that seem to have these on their lulav are my children. Everybody has, they buy, whatever they get at the store, they get the
Already, yeah.
the ready ones that are double. But I don't like the double because, number one, it's very hard to hold.
Thick.
It's very thick, it's very hard to hold. And number two, exactly what I just said to you. The lulav is not on the hadassim aromas are not on the lulav.
Yeah, they're separated.
They're separated.
One hits and one this side. Yeah.
And that's not what I like. Now you see, this is going to be a little smaller because I'm running, the leaves are a little shorter. I should have brought I didn't really have that many at home that were larger. I just grabbed one of these on my way out of the door, thinking, I would show you. Let's see if I can get another.
Should come.
This is suit for my, I think, I buy my size.
If your hadassim or arovos are very big, you can cut them from the bottom. You can't cut on top,
Yeah.
but you can cut on the bottom.
Main Street?
You don't have to, they have to be a certain size.
30.
But they don't
Check
have
the lips.
Check that.
333.
Okay,
Just like this. Вот так спуск like
let's
this.
go see what we can do here to seal this up.
It's in the bags.
In the bag is can be missing the lips, right? Huh? The most important that.
Petrol or something. Petrol.
Etro you can have a little bit but the other sim is a 333 if you know come this is problem.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Because last year somebody told me most of them this was patur. Tell the guy don't sell it. Say no.
Most of what was possible?
The Hadasim might have said
Arava.
Arava.
Why?
Because it's supposed to be the 333 like this.
That's the hadassim are supposed to be 333.
Yeah, some of them is missing in the middle or on the side, and that's not good. It's a pasul. And tell the guy, say, don't sell it. Why?
Now everything is vacuum packed.
Because they say they put it on the caution stamp there, but that's why I'm selling. That's what they say. Because in Israel, say what they do, they hire the Chinese or some Vietnamese people. One time they show him, and first they see it, okay, everything good. And when they pack it, they never see what is going on. They go come where, The eyes getting tired, Глаза уже начинают болеть, работа большая. Get tired, don't look at it, don't pay attention already. Automatically go. And they put a stamp on the kosher, tamam.
Here we
Что
go.
там идет, что не идет? Ребят.
Such a papa.
Да.
So now, it will spread out a little bit. It will spread out as it dries out, but in the meantime, you put the lulav on, and it fits your grip.
Thank
You're welcome.
Там
It's
богатый.
unusual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
you. Сами делайте.
I'll make you one.
May I see? Give me time.
He's afraid that you're not going to give it back. Okay, you can turn off the tape, I guess.
They are my pen.